Two white officers smirked as they cuffed Marcus Daniels, a black lawyer and the head of one of the nation's most powerful law firms, accusing him of a crime he didn't commit. They thought he'd be just another victim of their corrupt system, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. What started as a routine abuse of power would unravel their careers and expose a web of injustice that couldn't stay hidden. What happened next would shock even the most hardened. But let's start from the beginning. Late one evening, the suburban streets were bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, casting long shadows on the pristine sidewalks. Marcus Daniels, a black man in his early 40s, navigated the quiet, affluent neighborhood in his sleek black Mercedes. The hum of the engine was a gentle contrast to the silence of the street. Dressed impeccably in a tailored navy blue suit, a crisp white shirt, and a silk tie, Marcus exuded confidence and success. His polished leather shoes gleamed faintly under the dashboard lights, and a gold watch on his wrist caught occasional flashes from the passing street lamps. The day had been long, a marathon of meetings, negotiations, and last-minute revisions to an important contract. Yet, as Marcus made his way home, he felt a sense of fulfillment. As the director of one of the country's leading law firms, he had achieved a level of success few could dream of. But while his career had propelled him into a world of luxury, Marcus never forgot his roots. Born in a working-class neighborhood, he had seen firsthand the injustices faced by marginalized communities, and those memories were woven into the fabric of his success. Suddenly, the peaceful rhythm of his drive was shattered. Flashing blue and red lights burst into his rearview mirror, accompanied by the sharp wail of a siren. Marcus's stomach tightened as he instinctively glanced at his speedometer. He wasn't speeding. He hadn't run a stop sign. There was no logical reason for the police to stop him. But experience told him that logic often had little to do with encounters like this. Pulling to the side of the road, Marcus adjusted his tie and took a deep breath. He knew the drill. Stay calm, stay compliant, and avoid sudden movements. His headlights illuminated the approaching figures of two white police officers. The taller one, Officer Dunham, walked briskly to the driver's side, his hand resting ominously on the holster at his hip. His partner, Officer Rhodes, circled the car, his flashlight slicing through the darkness, its beam bouncing off the leather interior and expensive briefcase on the passenger seat. Dunham rapped on the window with his flashlight, his voice gruff and commanding. "License and registration." Marcus pressed the button to lower his window and handed over his documents without hesitation. "Here you go, officer," he said evenly, keeping his tone polite but firm. Dunham scrutinized the license, his expression unreadable. Meanwhile, Rhodes leaned down, peering into the car with an exaggerated thoroughness. His eyes narrowed, and his lips twisted into a smirk. "What's a guy like you doing around here so late?" he sneered, his tone laced with suspicion. Marcus met his gaze calmly, suppressing the wave of frustration rising within him. "I live in this area," he replied, his voice steady. "Is there a problem, officers?" Dunham's lips curled into a smirk, a hint of condescension flickering in his eyes. "We got a report of suspicious activity," he said. "Step out of the car." Marcus hesitated for a moment. He knew his rights and understood that the officers had no probable cause, but he also knew that asserting those rights could escalate the situation in ways that might spiral out of control. With a measured exhale, he opened the door and stepped out, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. Rhodes wasted no time. As Marcus stood by the car, the shorter officer ducked his head inside, his flashlight sweeping over the seats and floor. Within moments, he straightened up, holding a small plastic bag filled with white powder between two gloved fingers. "Well, well," Rhodes said, his voice oozing triumph. "Looks like we got ourselves a drug dealer." Marcus's jaw clenched, but he kept his expression neutral. "That's not mine," he said firmly, his voice unwavering. Dunham chuckled, the sound cold and mocking. "Sure it's not," he said, snapping a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Funny how it just showed up under your seat." The metal cuffs clicked shut around Marcus's wrists. As the officers led him to their patrol car, the absurdity of the situation was almost laughable. Almost. Marcus Daniels, a man who had spent his career defending justice and holding the corrupt accountable, was now being dragged to a precinct under false charges. The irony wasn't lost on him. Sitting in the back seat of the police car, Marcus remained composed. He didn't protest or raise his voice. These officers thought they'd caught an easy target, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. Marcus Daniels wasn't just any black man driving a luxury car through a wealthy neighborhood. He was a man with resources, connections, and a legal team that would ensure this injustice would not go unanswered. At Daniels and Associates, the office buzzed with a mix of disbelief and outrage the following morning. Marcus's senior associate, Vanessa Johnson, a savvy litigator in her mid-30s, received a cryptic text from him that read, "Arrested. Evidence planted. Handle it." Vanessa wasted no time. She summoned the firm's team of top lawyers into the conference room. "Our boss has been targeted by these officers. They planted evidence and assumed he wouldn't fight back, but they picked the wrong person." The team pored over records, discovering a disturbing pattern. Officers Dunham and Rhodes had a history of dubious arrests, disproportionately targeting black drivers. Public records revealed complaints filed against them, but none had stuck, thanks to bureaucratic delays and lack of legal representation for their victims. Vanessa quickly reached out to civil rights activists and journalists, leaking the officers' misconduct anonymously to ensure public scrutiny. Meanwhile, the firm's investigators scoured the precinct's records, pulling surveillance footage from Marcus's arrest and matching it against timestamps from his car's GPS system. The smoking gun? Body cam footage from a rookie officer at the scene showed Rhodes planting the evidence while muttering, "This'll teach him to drive through our neighborhood." As news of Marcus's arrest broke, the media storm took on a life of its own. Protesters gathered outside the precinct, demanding accountability for Dunham and Rhodes. Social media amplified the outrage, and hashtags like #JusticeForMarcus trended nationwide. In court, Vanessa delivered a blistering argument. She presented the body cam footage, GPS logs, and character witnesses to dismantle the officer's credibility. She called out systemic racism in policing, tying Marcus's case to a broader pattern of misconduct. Dunham and Rhodes's defense unraveled under pressure. Their testimonies were inconsistent, and under cross-examination, Rhodes admitted to following orders when planting evidence, a revelation that implicated not only the officers, but the precinct's leadership. Outside the courtroom, Marcus addressed reporters. "I am one of the lucky ones," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "I have the resources to fight back. But how many others don't? This isn't just about me. It's about justice for everyone who's been silenced." The verdict was swift. Dunham and Rhodes were convicted of evidence tampering and misconduct, losing their badges and facing prison time. The precinct faced a federal investigation, uncovering a web of corruption that extended far beyond Marcus's arrest. But Marcus's fight didn't end there. He partnered with activists to launch a legal defense fund for victims of police misconduct. His firm began offering pro bono services to marginalized communities, ensuring systemic change beyond his personal victory. Months later, Marcus returned to his office, where Vanessa waited with a folder of new cases. "Ready to take down the next corrupt institution?" she asked with a sly smile. Always, Marcus replied. Golden Hills, the neighborhood where Marcus had been arrested, became a symbol, not of division, but of reform. And for Marcus Daniels, what began as a personal nightmare became a rallying cry for justice.